This is the meditative exercise. It's nice. So back to the Acharya, after that centering, the Acharya principle. Why is it that role models have a lasting impact on our lives? And maybe we can just do this. Anybody want to share some thoughts on why role models have a lasting, not examples of them, but why they have a lasting impact? The idea here is to get the group interactive, participating and interactive. You want to volunteer something? Okay. I wonder why you're sitting in the back there. Just in case. You want to say something?
Yes, Maharaj.
Yeah.
Basically, the role models, they are followed by others, and that generation continues. So the values what they are giving to us, they retain. They retain it for many generations.
That's a nice perspective. Very nice perspective. So let me say it back in a different way. If one wants to preserve, given that one wants to preserve higher culture and higher values and that which is elevating to an individual and group of individuals, acharyas have that function. That is, by modeling that value and that behavior, etc., it inspires others to keep that themselves, and it passes that same value and conduct. Come on forward. He gets the privilege to sit in the back because he has to get up and do stuff. Hare Krishna. So it preserves culture over generations. I'll give a little example of what you just said that I found a little surprising. Not surprising, but surprising. In the Radharaman temple, the deity of Radharaman has been worshipped the same way for so many generations. The person who, when Gopal Bhatta, one of our acharyas, was traveling in North India, he was going to the to Mandakini River to get some shilas to worship, Shalagram shilas. On the way in the North Country, he spent the night at a Brahmin's home, and there was a very wonderful, warm exchange. Before leaving, the Brahmin requested Gopal Bhatta, please give your blessings so that I may have a son, and if that does happen, then I'd like to have my first son become your servant, because he was very moved by the elevated nature of Gopal Bhatta. So the blessing was given. Some 12 years later, a young man showed up right at the end of Gopal Bhatta's puja, and he said, I've come to serve you. Who are you? My name is Gopinath. And you may not remember, but my father, you gave blessings to my father that he could have a son. I'm the firstborn son. My father pledged that the firstborn son would come and serve you. Here I am. So Gopal Bhatta accepted him as a disciple, And he remained a brahmachari for his life. Gopinath, if I recall correctly, was his name. And he had a younger brother who came later, and the younger brother became married, and the two brothers did the puja under Gopal Bhatta's direction of Radharaman. And the one who was married, his children became that line of Goswamis that continued the Goswami line looking after Radharaman over generation and generation and generation. So now there's quite a large family of elevated persons, and just going back in just the preservation of culture over time. The Acharya who was there prior to Vishvambar Goswami, who was the Acharya, the Goswami of Radharaman Temple during Prabhupada's time, he was so dedicated to Radharaman that when one of the members of that organization, the Radharaman group, had gone to Calcutta and was a very erudite person carrying the message of Lord Chaitanya and the teachings of the Bhagavatam, and very enthusiastic to give Krishna consciousness to others. And in the course of living for some time in Calcutta, he found an abandoned deity, a 7-foot tall neem deity of Mahaprabhu. And so he received the deity, he restored the deity, and he worshipped the deity. And at a certain time, he was going to depart this world. And he requested the Goswami back in Vrindavan to accept responsibility for the worship of the deity. He said, we're focused on Radharaman. I'm not going to accept that responsibility. And time passed and time passed. And as I recall, that renunciate left the world. And so there was this commotion about what to do. And so the deity was then shipped from Calcutta to Vrindavan, kept somewhere and worshipped for some time. And then it was finally accepted by that Goswami, whose name I can't remember, that officially, not at the same Radharaman temple, but in the Vrindavan town in a certain section not far, they would accept the responsibility to worship this 7-foot tall deity of Mahaprabhu. Amiya Gauranga was the deity's name. Amiya Gauranga. So the next in line, generation-wise, was Vishvambar Goswami. And Vishvambar Goswami, like his predecessors, was amongst all the Goswamis of Vrindavan. All the Goswamis means through the generations of sons and so forth, they continued the tradition of worshipping the deity very nicely. Amongst them, everyone recognized Vishvambar Goswami, this descendant from the disciple of Gopal Bhatta, was the best at deity worship, because the worship of Radharaman was so outstanding and in many ways. It was Vishvambar Goswami who made the arrangement with the Goswami at the Radha Damodar temple for Prabhupada to stay there. I mean, because of his seniority and his relationship with this other Goswami, why don't you ask Prabhupada, he wasn't called Prabhupada at that time, but to stay in these 2 rooms at the Radha Damodar temple. So he agreed. He approached Prabhupada. Prabhupada looked at the rooms and saw that they were in bad disrepair. So it would take some time to put them in shape so it's habitable. And he made an arrangement to stay there. That same Vishvambar Goswami traveled in ISKCON centers around the world, having pictures. I don't know, I can't remember exactly how it was done, but there was a way to project pictures, and he was describing the worship of Radharaman through the Prabhupada's temples in ISKCON. I remember very clearly him visiting our temple in New York. Later, that same Vishvambar Goswami was the one in charge of installing Krishna Balaram and Radhashama Sundar. So he was the one overseeing the whole thing, so that no one would then question later it wasn't done the right way, because he had the most respect amongst all of them. His son, Padmanabha Goswami, saw all of this and similarly had so much affection for Prabhupada and ISKCON, and was, because he is no longer, a staunch supporter. He also traveled and spoke about Radharaman and making presentations more elaborate. However, the next in line, the same procedure, the eldest son, etc., etc., the next in line is a bit of a maverick. And I remember the details, but he was saying things and doing things that were inconsistent, and it was a big worry. And while in Vrindavan, during the yatra, someone showed me a photograph where he's changed his tilak. And the understanding is younger generation people have a tendency to be a little innovative, a little maverick-like, and tradition may get lost. Now, I was very happy to see, not surprised, but very happy to see, when we went to the Radharaman temple, the pujari was wearing same standard tilak and did everything the same standard way. Everything was standardized. But if the leader, if the Acharya of the place starts to go off center, then what's going to happen over time? Now, there's, as far as I understand, there's some, he's respected. At the same time, there's some tension because he has this tendency to break tradition and say things and do things that are not within tradition. So when you commented, this is the question up here, why role models have left lasting impact on our lives. When that lasting impact on our lives starts to change, it's a little problematic. So the Acharya has a big role. But in the same way, Brahmanas in society, they have a big role. Supposing there aren't qualified Brahmanas. That was one of Prabhupada's main themes. Because of the lack of qualified Brahmanas, the Kshatriyas aren't properly trained. Because the Kshatriyas aren't properly trained, people are being not properly led. So the remedy, so one can go on complaining about this and that and the other thing, the remedy that he saw, which is not so dissimilar from the remedy that Vyasadeva saw, is to develop the proper qualities. So that, here it's values. This is the Gita values topic, by the way, for those who just came in. For Gita values, one of them identified of the 6 was Acharya, principle. With that become behaviors. So, changing of tilak and whatever the other things that were said and done by the current Acharya at Radharaman temple gives worries, because tradition is preserved by and corrected by staying within tradition. So then comes this whole thing that's written in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, or Nectar Devotion. Prabhupada writes about there's a distinction between principles and details. And details are up to an Acharya to be capable to adjust, and principles are not to be adjusted. Anyway, that's one response to this. Why role models have a lasting impact on our lives. Anyone else want to volunteer something? I've been speaking too much. This is supposed to be a little bit interactive. Yes? Go ahead, speak. Go ahead, speak. Take the microphone, but go ahead and speak. Give him the microphone.
It's like seeing the picture versus just description, reading a description. When you have a role model, you can actually see their life, how they actually exemplified the teachings. That has a lasting impact on the heart. Like you can visualize it. Like I was reading the Light of Bhagavata back cover, where someone gave some what is that called, the feedback about, so what they said in 2-3 of them, they said Prabhupada's life is a living example. He lived the teachings that he taught. So that's the most impactful thing on me. That's the comment that some professor or someone I was reading there. So like that, when I see someone actually following, that's what I want to follow. Someone, a person. It's not just the theoretically, it won't stay with me. That will impact my heart.
Very nice. One can read about brahmacharya life, one can read about grahastha life, one can read about sannyas life, but what does it look like? And when you see a very qualified brahmachari or brahmacharis, then make the brahmachari ashram nice, because it's very clear what is that species. Or a grahastha. What's an ideal grahastha? You can read about it in a book, but what does it look like? It's not like it's going to be one grahastha is going to be a carbon copy of the next one, but it shows by example. It impacts those who wish to go in a certain direction in their life by their guna and karma. Behind you.
Guru Maharaj, the Acharya's statements, or the exemplary behavior, their entire life, precepts, anything. So my experience was, I felt the statement, what they give is very heart-touching. And I spent some time, it's not like my mind saying I like it. It's my heart. It penetrated deep. And so I wanted to examine, and after examining, I liked. And is there purity and selfless service to uplift all others? That is really, even in the light of Bhagavata, though it is poetic, the literature is like poetry-like, but the message is giving us education, spiritual education. So my thought was like, instead of letting the acharyas into my life a little bit at a time, instead, if I become part of their life, my life is perfected.
Okay. Nice sharing. I think we'll move on. Here's a current fellow, John Maxwell. I don't know who this person is, but your walk talks, and your talk talks, but your walk talks louder than your talk talks. It's just describing in a cute play on words what Acharya does. Actions speak louder than words. That's the common way. Here's the phrase in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 3. Whatever action a great man performs, common men follow. And whatever standards he sets by exemplary acts, all the world pursues. So this is the encapsulation of the Acharya principle. Remember, I'm using the word principle. It's a value, but it's also a principle, the Acharya principle within Bhagavad Gita. Good one to remember. Now this next slide shows a little sound. I don't know if sound's going to come. I think the idea, in a group discussion, well, this is a breakout session. So here we go. Think of someone who you want to share this with, sitting near you. Think of a person who positively influenced your personal life. Someone, childhood teacher, historic hero, family member, any contact, etc. What quality of theirs attracted you the most? It says write it down. So what's the quality and how did that influence you the most? And then discuss with someone one or two incidents where that particular role model identified above exemplified that quality. So this says we're going to take 12 minutes. I don't know if we need to take 12 minutes, but I think the exercise is a good exercise. So look at the screen, figure out, how you feel inclined to respond. Someone sitting next to you, one or two persons, and she will share for a few minutes. We'll go for 12 minutes if we want to. Is it clear? Questions? On your mark, get set. Go. One more minute, finish up. Okay. That's a nice exercise, isn't it? Makes it real. The person that inspires you and their qualities, how that quality was exhibited and impacted. It's nice. It tells you something about yourself also. When there's a quality that you really appreciate, it's not like that's missing in you, but it's something that's you, and it inspires you to be you more. So the Acharya principle, by definition, Achar means conduct or behavior. That's the tip of the iceberg part. But they're teaching. It's very clear, specifically with Srila Prabhupada's life. He set an example. He taught by example. And what he was teaching was his heart. Over and 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 over, nonstop to the very end. To the very end. He was just giving and giving and giving. And what was he giving? Giving access to the greatest happiness in life, the real purpose of life. He knew what it was. He knew why people were distracted and misled and in complicated situations in life because of forgetting that was the most meaningful thing. So, tirelessly. One of the things I like, many things, but one of the things I like about Sally Agrawal's comments about hosting Srila Prabhupada, her husband, she was an American lady, and her husband was an Indian man, Gopal Agrawal. And when Gopal had sent this invitation letter to Prabhupada to come, she was thinking, uh-oh, what's it going to be like? You know, he's a holy man, going to come stay in her house? What's it going to be like? She was apprehensive. But she said later, I was apprehensive, but he was so nice. He never made me feel uncomfortable. I never felt uncomfortable. And he would talk about anything and everything that was just important to me. Yet somehow, very quickly, the topic went to Krishna. But he did it with grace so that she wasn't uncomfortable. He was a skilled social person. He could speak about anything with her. And who knows what her life was up to, but the Acharya. So next is, we're going to be discussing some principles of Acharya life, but this is before was what, and now it's how. How does a teacher exemplify spiritual life? So here's some principles. Exemplifying equal vision, which is touching on one of the earlier values. One of the earlier values was equal vision, samadarshana. And the samadarshana person sees all living entities equally. So an Acharya exemplifies that vision. There's the Bhagavad Gita verse. And what does that look like? What does Pandita Samadarshana look like? How do you see all living entities that have so many differences alike? It doesn't mean, materially speaking, or in terms of the coverings of the soul, that the dealings are equal. Rather, the dealings are different because the coverings are different. So, for example, one speaks to a small child differently than one speaks to an adult, because they're small children, they can understand certain things, and they have certain needs, and so they're addressed accordingly. But they're addressed according to the understanding, that the consciousness that here's a spirit soul that's in a certain trajectory of their evolution, heading towards wherever they're heading towards, and then what's appropriate way to help them make the mission of life successful. Mission of life successful means go to Krishna. There's so many nice examples. So many nice, because coming up for me is, we'll go back to this one. Coming up for me is our Sundari Radha has called it our winter retreat. So during the Christmas holiday for many years in the Chicago area, we've had a retreat because it's holiday time. Now, many people go here and there, but we have retreat amongst those who haven't gone here and there. So this year, the topic that is everyone's going, all the different speakers are going to speak on, is personalities from Chaitanya Charitamrita, which is a really nice topic. So I started meditating on some personalities, and one of those personalities that I've been meditating on is Shivananda Sain. It's not so well known who is Shivananda Sain, but going into it deeper and deeper, he is a very dear devotee of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, so dedicated to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Lord Nityananda. So one of those Pandita Samadarshana, or equal vision examples, is the story of the dog of Shivananda Sain. Many of you know the story, some of you don't. Lord Chaitanya requested him, because of his seniority and his expertise in dealing with everything of this world, to arrange for the devotees from Bengal to make almost a 1-month journey to go all the way from Bengal to Puri to attend the Rath Yatra. And then after the Rath Yatra, they would stay, and then till the end of the rainy season, then go back. So that's like a 6-month thing. 1 month to go, 4 months in Puri, and 1 month to go back. So he was in charge of everything. He was like everyone's father, and several hundred people. And it was like a big deal to arrange, because crossing rivers in the boats, crossing hostile government, bandits, accommodations, meals, everybody's everything, children, the whole shebang. 300 people, 350 people every day for a month. And then situating them when they got to Puri and overseeing all the medical need. It's like a big deal. It's a big deal. It's a big deal. He was in charge. So one of the things that he did in the course of 1 year's travel, there was a stray dog. Now, it's not so much a phenomena in America, but in India it's quite common. Stray dogs, street dogs, dogs that have no master. So there was one such dog that as they were traveling, the dog started to follow them. So he took care of the dog like he's one of them. There's a detail. One evening, when it was time to feed everybody, they couldn't find the dog. So he sent responsible people in all directions, find the dog so we can feed the dog. They couldn't find the dog. He was very sad. When he got to Puri, much to his surprise, he first went to see Lord Chaitanya, and there was the dog, the same dog. And Lord Chaitanya was calling out to the dog, "Say, Krishna." And the dog would say, Krishna. And then Lord Chaitanya had some coconut pulp, and he threw the coconut pulp. The dog caught the coconut pulp and started eating the coconut pulp. Shivananda Sain paid obeisances to the dog because he was the recipient of such mercy of Lord Chaitanya, chanting Krishna's name and receiving the remnants of Lord Chaitanya's prasad. Pandita Samadarshana. And there's many nice examples. But that's a symptom of an Acharya. They don't just say the teaching, they live the teaching. They see the differences of embodiments, but they deal respectfully. Here's another nice one I heard when I was in Vrindavan. A contemporary of the six Goswamis was Mirabai. Mirabai from childhood's a long story, but she was very devoted to Krishna. She got married. The man she married was not a Krishna Bhakta, and there was disagreement. He wanted her to worship, but she would only worship Krishna. And when the husband died, the father of her husband wanted her to enter into the fire. And she said, well, I only have one husband anyways. That's Krishna. And so there was a big dispute, but she carried on with her Krishna devotion, and she eventually moved to Vrindavan. And when she was living in Vrindavan, the Rupa and Sanatan were the elders, but she lived not far. The place where she was keeping her residence was not far from Jiva Goswami. She requested one time audience with Jiva Goswami, who said, I can't meet with a woman. And then she said, this is the story at least, she said, but you understand, we're all women. We're all Prakriti. And there's one Purusha, and that's our Krishna. So you shouldn't feel this way. So he appreciated her. No, with proper association, present, he met with her. Pandita Samadarshana. Seeing and then acting according to that vision. Simple living and high thinking. Now that's a phrase that Prabhupada used, simple living, high thinking. It's a principle of Vaishnavas. Keep it simple. It's a principle of Brahmana Vaishnavas. Brahmanas also live very simply, and high thinking, but a Vaishnava should be Brahminical, living simply. Now, household life, there's a certain amount of, you have to have stuff. However, ideally is don't accumulate more stuff than you need. This is one of Rupa Goswami's teachings, Atyahara. You have what you need, and you're always thinking, do I really need? And if there's something you don't really need, you give it away. And you have one thing that you need, you take care of, but you can live simply. Not just Brahmanas, but those that are living a Vaishnava life. Simple living, high thinking. And the Acharya is one who exemplifies that. A classic example in Gaura Lila is Magari the hunter. Many of you know the story. That's actually Narada and Magari. But anyways, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, there's Narada, not Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Narada met a hunter in the forest, and when Narada saw the hunter, he stepped forward because the hunter was about to shoot some animal, and the animals ran away because they were afraid of the person making some noise in the forest. Magari, being a ruffian, nonetheless had some respect because he was in the presence of Narada. He wasn't that kind that we spoke about a little bit yesterday about people. Some people just don't care. His heart softened. And, who are you and what are you doing? And you just scared all the animals away. So Narada made a request. You know the story. Most of us here know the story. Narada requested, I have one request of you. My name is Narada Muni. I've come in service to Krishna. I just have one request. Rather than half killing the animals, can you kill them entirely? Why are you asking that? Because the animals suffer. So better you just kill them. You know, karmically, if you cause that suffering for animals, you'll have to undergo that suffering yourself. So don't half kill them completely. Really, I had no idea that they would suffer. My father taught me this practice of half killing, and I was enjoying watching them flap and bounce around. But if they're suffering, that's not good. So what should I do? Break your bow. If I break my bow, how am I going to maintain my family? He said, I'll make the arrangement. I give you that assurance. Break your bow. So he broke his bow. Build yourself a little cottage. You see in the painting, there's a little cottage. Your family can stay there, and I'll see that all your necessities are provided. Now, it's a big thing to say, because he's not going to hang around. He's going to go off and do what Narada Muni does. But the recognition of this previously hunter now becoming a soft-hearted man attracted the attention of many people who came and brought items for him as charity. And so he was able to easily maintain his family. So later, you see from the painting, Narada came with one sadhu, Angira Rishi, if I remember correctly, and when they saw the Magari, he came running, but he stopped. And he took his upper garment and started moving the ants out of the way because he didn't want to step on an ant. And Angira Muni said, what's he doing? He said, well, he previously was a hunter, but now his quality is such, he can't even harm an ant. This is the power of bhakti. So, simple living, high thinking. That's one example. Two principles. Principle-centered Acharya's life. It's also said the Acharya is one who they're devotees, and so they exemplify one or more of the processes of devotional service. Anyone here not know what the 9 processes of devotional service are? Because I can identify them. Everybody knows? You don't want to say if you don't know. 9 processes of bhakti. The first 3 processes, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam. That's easy. Hearing, Shravanam, and Kirtanam, hearing and chanting. Hearing and chanting makes cleansing of the heart. And then comes remembrance, not just of what you've heard, but remembrance of your relationship with Krishna. So bhakti starts with the Shravanam, then Kirtanam, then Vishnu Smaranam. Then the next 3. What's the next 3? Who wants to say the next 3? One at a time. Why don't you say the next 4? Number 4? No, more than 4. Padasevanam. No, shh. What does Padasevanam mean? Pada Sevanam, service to the lotus feet of the Lord, the goddess of fortune. Padasevanam. Archanam. Next. That comes after. But Archanam. We're on Archanam. Archana means deity worship. A process of bhakti, one of the 9, is deity worship. Bandhanam, offering prayers. Offering prayers to the deity, or offering prayers to Krishna, or to our acharyas, or to those who you look up to. Then, dasyam sakyam atmanivedanam. Dasyam, service. Friendship, like Arjuna. And atmanivedanam, So each of those 9 processes, there's in the painting, there's someone who exemplifies them. There's Hanuman, that's Dasyam, right? And hearing and chanting, Shukadev Goswami and Maharaj Pariksit. Anyway, there's the 9 processes of bhakti. Occur at the bottom right, that's Bandhanam. Bali Maharaj above him, that's Atma Nivedanam. He surrendered everything to Vamanadev. So that's principle 2. Here's principle 3. We only have 4. Exemplifying service to awaken others' spiritual nature. That's this kindness, extending kindness to others, receiving from predecessor acharyas and extending that which we have received to others. This is our life. And one who becomes very accomplished at it or very deeply ingrained in it, that's an acharya. It doesn't have to be a sannyasi acharya. It can be a simple person acharya. But their life is exemplifying that, serving in ways that help awaken others' spiritual nature. And 4th principle, exemplifying that spiritual life is practical, whoever we are. Again, it doesn't matter what your social position is or your occupation is, but becoming so absorbed in one's own personal spiritual life, it impacts others who see one living that way. The verse from Srimad Bhagavatam that Lord Chaitanya accepted as the essence of perfection and the means to achieve it, this is from his discussion with Ramananda Roy, this celebrated verse from Brahma's prayers. Stane statak, stay in your position. You don't need to change something externally. Stay in your position, from whatever your position is. You stay in your position. Shruti gatam, engage in hearing. Tanavan madobhir, and engage your body, mind, and words in service to Krishna, according to what you've heard and understood. From whatever your position, whatever the position. For some reason, my mind is going to this nice devotee, Prabhupada disciple, who was quite elderly, but was an ideal person. Simple man. His name was Vibhu Chaitanya. He had a back problem. He couldn't stand up straight. So he always was tilting like this. And he had the part of his back problem was his arms, when he walked, were out behind him like a bird taking flight. And every day, he would come in to the temple during Mangal Arati. So everyone's there, and he couldn't pay obeisances properly, but he went through before each of the 3 altars, bowed as much as he could, stood up, saw the deities, offered prayers, and went into the deity kitchen, which is, if you know the temple in Vrindavan, it's just to the right of the altar, and went up the stairs and didn't come out until after the Rajbhog offering. So he cooked in the kitchen with his body in that position very devotedly. And it wasn't a gourmet cook, but he was a very devotional person. And so his cooking was appreciated by the deities and by everyone who took the remnants of his cooking. I was one of the ones. So, simple man. And as he got older, his body was unable to even do that. And so they gave him a guest room in the guest house. It was on the ground floor because he couldn't go up and down. And he left his body in Vrindavan at the Krishna Balaram Mandir guest house, taken care of by the devotees because he was such an elevated personality. He wasn't a big orator or a big scholar or a big anything. It's just a big heart. Very, very, very devoted. Simple man, not a man of many words, but very pure. So, exemplifying spiritual life is practical whoever we are. Stanes tatakshrutigatan tanavan manobir. We're not perfected beings, so how can we be examples? That's a big one. Personalities in the Srimad Bhagavatam, they also faced distractions, but regained their Krishna consciousness and attained the supreme abode. Classic example, Dhruva. Have you ever wondered who was Dhruva in his previous life? Anyone know who was Dhruva in his previous life? Dhruva Maharaj, in one life he achieved perfection. In 6 months, he achieved perfection. It's not where he started from. He started from being very angry. He moved from the position of being very angry towards his stepmother and his father, and just wanted revenge. But he overcame all of that by the mercy of his mother and the mercy of Narada. I can't remember exactly, but there's something remotely in my memory that said, because this is at the beginning of Satya Yuga. So his father was the son of Swayambhuva Manu. Swayambhuva Manu is the first of the 14 Manus. So at least it's the beginning of the day of Brahma, if not the life of Brahma. So his Swayambhuva Manu's 2 sons, one of them was his father, Uttanapada. So who was Dhruva before he was Dhruva? Somehow he took his birth again. I can't recall exactly, but someone who had made some offense and therefore had to take birth again. But he took birth again in the family of a king, but he had, some anger in him. And he overcame it by the mercy of his mother.